Welcome to the Composer Kate podcast. My name is Kate Nishimura, and I'm a composer. In this series, I'm going to tell you about each piece of music that I've written so far. Each episode will focus on one piece. I'll be sharing behind-the-scenes stories from creating the piece, suggestions for performers and conductors, and teachable moments within the music. I'll answer frequently asked questions and even share perspectives from my collaborators. My goal is to offer you a candid study guide for each piece in my catalog by inviting you into my process, my experiences, and why I do what I do. I hope this series can help set you up for success when studying, rehearsing, and performing my music. Thank you for listening. Hello, and welcome to the first episode of my new podcast series. I am so excited to be doing this. This is something that I've been thinking about doing for a few years now, so I'm happy to be finally making it happen, and I'm so happy that you've chosen to spend some of your time today listening to what I've got to say. That means a lot to me. Many of you will know that one of my favorite aspects of being a composer is having the chance to connect with people who are playing my music and have conversations together about the experience of bringing that music to life. I really enjoy getting the chance to dig deeper than what it says in the score or in the program notes, and I love answering questions from ensembles or conductors, and sometimes people point things out that I hadn't thought about before. Anyone who's done a Q&A with me before can attest to the excitement that I get when someone asks me a question that I have not been asked before. It's very fun, very exciting. Over the years of doing this work as a composer, I've noticed some of the same questions coming up, and people working on the same pieces have discovered common misinterpretations or issues within the same spots within a piece. So a lot of this is just me learning as I go and learning how to be more clear in my notation and what I put in the music so that musicians and conductors understand my intentions better and we all get closer to the desired result. I incorporate all of this learning as I create new work going forward, but I've been thinking about how I could help clarify things for people who are working on my existing music right now. These kinds of conversations and questions typically happen during an in-person or virtual visit with an ensemble, sometimes at conferences or festivals or that kind of thing. And as much as those activities are awesome, I can only physically do so many during any given year. So I've been thinking about how I can reach more people and share this kind of background info to help musicians interpret and connect with my music without me having to actually be in the room. So I find the podcast format just really clicks with my brain. I am an avid podcast listener myself. I love to listen to podcasts while doing other tasks, while going for a walk or gardening or cleaning up, that kind of thing. And many of you know that I'm already a podcast co-host. Shout out to the Bandroom podcast and my wonderful co-host there, Dylan Maddox. Check out the Bandroom if you haven't already listened to it. So I think podcasts just are really awesome. They are an efficient and approachable way for people to listen and learn on their own time at their convenience. Like I said, people listen to podcasts while commuting, driving, cleaning, working out, going for walks, all that kind of fun stuff. And I also think it could be really fun for teachers to use this as an educational tool as well. You can play episodes during class or rehearsal and talk about it. If it's a piece that you're working on in rehearsal, you can pull up the podcast episode and dig a little deeper with me. You can also assign listening as homework and then come back together for a discussion afterwards. There are endless possibilities, and I'm hopeful that this will find the right people and that you will all enjoy coming along this journey with me. So with all of that out of the way, let's get into the piece for this week's episode, which is Into the Blue. Into the Blue is a short piece for grade 2 concert band. And when I say short, I mean 90 seconds short. So because of this, it fits really nicely anywhere on a concert program. It works well as a concert opener, a short encore, a palate cleanser between bigger pieces, wherever you want it, it's gonna work. The piece was commissioned and premiered in the spring of 2018 by a group of very enthusiastic grade 9 or ninth grade students at Ingersoll District Collegiate Institute, which is in southwestern Ontario, Canada. The music teacher there is Margot Northcott, a friend of mine from band camp, but I will come back to that in a little bit. The reason the piece is so short is because of a very tight timeline. So I wrote this piece in just a few weeks, which is not something I would recommend doing if you can help it. It was very stressful to meet such a quick deadline, but it was super worth it in this case. The students were so passionate about having something created just for them while they were all still together in the same class. And they even paid for the commission themselves, which is just amazing. That's the only time so far that that has ever happened in my career. They were super eager to offer me ideas to work with when creating the piece, which was really awesome. One thing that you should all know about me and how I approach commission projects is that I believe commissions should be a collaborative experience for everyone involved. I really like to get input from the commissioning individual or ensemble so that I can create something tailored to their needs and something that represents them, their energy, the stories that they wish to tell through the music. I also aim to empower others through the music I create, so I'm always keeping these things in mind as I work. For this particular project, the students shared that they were hoping for something with a happy, upbeat feel, something uplifting and hopeful. They told me about their school mascot, who's named Ace. Ace, the blue bomber, a bird of prey in a bomber jacket and goggles. So immediately I knew I wanted to incorporate that somehow. You all know I love birds, and I just thought it would be super fun to incorporate this mascot somehow. So I started with Ace. I chose the key of A flat major, and the first melody in the piece uses the notes A flat, C, and E flat, which is a musical spelling of the name Ace. So this was a lot of fun to point out to the group when we first worked on it. I think it's a really sweet way to preserve their school spirit in the piece forever. The contour of the melodic material depicts soaring through the sky, just like a bird, and I used ostinato repetition to create a feeling of forward motion and momentum. I used lots of syncopation in both the melodies and the supportive parts to keep everything interesting and fun, while providing some good learning opportunities for musicians at this level. I think this piece is a great way to teach syncopation and rhythmic precision because the material is so repetitive and catchy, and the whole piece is so short that it leaves lots of rehearsal time to work on these small details and putting everything together. So I'm going to play a short excerpt to show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to start at letter A within the piece. So if you are working on this piece and you have the music, you have the score or your part in front of you, you can follow along. I'm going to play from letter A just to show you the melody constructed around A flat, C, and E flat, spelling out Ace, and an example of some of the syncopation found in the melodic material and the supporting material as well. So there is also a little feature moment for the low brass and low woodwinds, which I love to include in band pieces wherever I can, or any kind of music. My main instrument as a student was the bass clarinet, so I know firsthand what it's like to get stuck playing whole notes all the time, and I try to write in more interesting opportunities for these instruments in my own music when I can. So I'm going to play a short excerpt again. This is measure 25, just to showcase this little moment for the low voices in the ensemble. Okay, so let's talk about the title. The title, Into the Blue, came from reframing my perspective on the task of writing this piece so quickly. I felt at first that it was a big challenge to come up with something good just seemingly out of the blue with very short notice and not a lot of time to make it. But throughout the process, I realized that I could flip the narrative for myself and embrace the opportunity heading into the blue instead of out of the blue. So I thought it fit perfectly with the requests from the students, connecting to the blue sky and the uplifting energy. Titles are so important in this line of work. They are often the first impression that people get of a piece of music, sometimes even before listening to it, before looking at it or anything. So titles are really important, and I'm really happy with how this one turned out. This piece was premiered in June 2018 in Ingersoll, Ontario, and we'll hear a little bit more about that just in a bit. But later that year, in December 2018, Into the Blue was included in the concert band new music reading session at the Midwest Clinic in Chicago. And this was the first time my music was played at Midwest. It's not an official performance, but it was still pretty significant for me in my early career. It was really great to have my music heard by such a large number of band directors all at once. I really appreciate having that opportunity, and I think it's so cool that it was this little minute and a half long piece. Usually in the reading session, the band will have to choose a short excerpt from a piece. If the piece is 5 or 6 minutes, they'll choose like a minute or two to play of it, just to give people an idea of how it goes. And in this case, they got to play the whole piece because it was so short. So I thought that was really cool. Into the Blue was the winner of the 2019 Women Band Composition Contest led by Shannon Shaker. This contest was evaluated by a judging consortium of 10 conductors who are listed inside the score for this piece. So anyone who has a copy of this piece, you can take a look at the insert inside and see who was part of that judging consortium. This award came with an invitation to attend a performance of Into the Blue at Frostburg State University in Maryland. Shannon created an opportunity for me to do a short residency at the university, working with the wind ensemble on a few other pieces of mine as well as Into the Blue with the high school honor band during that same visit. So that was a lot of fun. In early 2020, I was the guest composer for the UMass Honor Band at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, and Into the Blue was featured on that concert. More recently, I was an artist in residence at Memorial University in St. John's, Newfoundland, and Into the Blue was included on a joint concert with a local junior high band, McDonald Drive Junior High. So this piece has been very popular among honor bands and other types of short timeline types of projects because of its, and I'm putting this in big air quotes, put together ability. Not only is it a short piece, but the way that it's constructed makes it really efficient and enjoyable to put together in a relatively short period of time. So for this reason, it works well for honor bands that only have a couple of days together, sometimes even one day of putting music together with a group. And it's also been a popular selection at concert band festivals for this same reason as well. When the pandemic hit in 2020, there was a sudden and urgent demand for music that was suitable for flexible or adaptable ensembles. So I created a 4-part version of Into the Blue. This arrangement consists of 4 interchangeable parts plus optional piano and percussion. The score is presented in concert pitch, and parts 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all available in C, B flat, E flat, and F. So covering pretty much all standard concert band transpositions and treble and bass clef in C, so even string players and other instrumentalists are able to join in. The parts are loosely structured around SATB voicing, but all of the parts can be played by any pitched instrument. So it resulted in a lot of really interesting combinations, and The arrangement exists still today, so if you are interested in checking it out, I encourage you to experiment with various combinations of who plays which part within the ensemble. So the piano part is optional, but it adds a harmonic and rhythmic foundation that can be really helpful, especially in smaller ensembles or unconventional configurations. A chordal analysis is provided in the piano part in case a guitarist or other rhythm section player is involved. There is a glockenspiel part, which can be doubled or substituted by any other mallet percussion instrument. And the snare drum part was intended, of course, for traditional snare drum, but it can be doubled or swapped out for other percussion instruments as needed. Trying to just make it work for whatever you've got. I'm really glad that I created this version because it allowed the music to be played during a time when large ensemble music making was prohibited, and it allowed me to reach more people. I have heard from students and teachers at smaller schools that really appreciated having this version available even post-pandemic, and individual musicians who were able to make multi-track recordings by themselves. So it really inspired me to think about how I could make more of my music accessible to smaller or unconventional ensembles as well. It took me a little while to wrap my head around the whole flex band thing, but I think once I started getting that kind of feedback, I recognized that this is a really valuable resource to have, and I created a few other flex versions of things as well. So I mentioned that this piece was commissioned by a grade 9 band directed by Margot Northcott. Margot is an amazing teacher and an amazing person. We worked together many years ago at NMC, the National Music Camp of Canada, and we have kept in touch all this time. She is the kind of person who consistently makes other people feel seen and heard and respected and cared for. And working with her and her students on this commission was so much fun and such a meaningful and memorable experience. When planning for this episode, I reached out to Margot to see if she was interested in sharing any thoughts about the piece, and she actually recorded a whole segment for me to include in this episode. So I'm going to play it for you now. Let's listen to it together.
So on April 12th, 2018, I had been teaching my grade 9 band students about composition, and I try really hard to make sure my 9s understand that composition is a real career. It is something that real people do. Every piece of media that you watch, everything you engage with, streams, television, there's a composer behind the scenes making sure the music happens. And one of my grade 9s called me on it and was like, well, if composing is a real job, do you know any real composers? And I snapped back, yes, I do. Yeah, my friend Kate from Bandcamp. After I explained that my friend Kate had recently left teaching a job that she loved to go become a full-time composer, the first question I got from the students was, are you going to leave us? And I said, no, I'm not leaving. Because that was the first concern. And the second question was, well, would she write something for us? And I said, I don't know. I'll ask her. And so on April 12th, 2018, I sent my friend Kate from Bandcamp a Facebook message. And I said, hey, Kate, I'm wondering if you might have any interest in doing a commissioned work for my grade 9 band students in the next 2 months. I knew that this was an outrageous ask. It was a very short timeline, and I was fully aware the answer could and should be no. And Kate got back to me right away. Kate said, hey Margot, so nice to hear from you. Hope you're doing well. Usually I need more notice, but depending on what you're looking for, it might be doable. So I mentioned to my students, music isn't free. This is gonna cost time and money to compose something from scratch. And it is April. There are 2 months of school left. There's very little left in our budget. We'd have to pay for it. And one student said, well, okay, what if every single one of us kicks in $20? And they all kind of went, yeah, that sounds like a reasonable amount of money. I'll pay $20 for a brand new piece of band music. And that was how it started. So I emailed Kate with a couple specifications. She gave me a budget, which was excellent. And we went from there. May 13th, 2018, just a month later, I got the message saying, hey, I finished your piece. The piece is called Into the Blue, and I think the kids will enjoy it. I want the listeners of your podcast to be brave and to reach out to their contacts, reach out to their friends, ask the impossible favor. Into the Blue exists because I didn't listen to that voice that told me that it was too big of an ask and I was being too much of a pest and too much trouble. I thought, oh, well, what's the worst that can happen? She'll say no. Instead, I got to say to them, hey, my friend Kate from band camp said yes to us. She's going to write a piece of music for us. She's going to visit our school. She's going to rehearse the piece she wrote with the grade 9 group. And then she's going to come to our end of year concert, June Tunes, at St. Paul's Presbyterian Church. We don't have an auditorium. If any listeners of this podcast are millionaires who would like to have their name on an auditorium in the town of Ingersoll, Ontario, please call me. I hear Into the Blue everywhere. Every time I hear other bands play it, I am reminded of that specific grade 9 group. And I hear that opening A flat, C, E flat. Da, 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 da. And those letters spell out ACE, which is our school's mascot, Ace, the Blue Bomber. And it blows me away that bands from all over the world have played that piece of music that has our school's name at the top of the sheet. Last year, I pulled Into the Blue out of our library to look at with the concert band. It's a whole new concert band, completely different kids. Every time I hand out a new piece of music, I ask the students, what do you see? What is new? What do you have questions about? And a student right away pointed out, hey, is that you? Is that us? Looking at the inscription at the top of the page. And I said, yeah, that's us. It is a point of pride for our school that we got to commission an exciting work from a young Canadian woman of color, a really successful composer. Kate, you're phenomenal. I am lucky to know you. I'm lucky to call you my friend.
Episode 1, and I've already cried. Happy, grateful tears, of course. Margot, thank you so much for this eloquent, beautiful testimonial, not only about Into the Blue, but about the significance of commissioning and the legacy and impact that it can have on an entire community. The level of ownership that students feel when they know the music was created with them in mind is just such a special thing to witness. It is hard to believe how far-reaching this piece has grown to be and how many communities all around the world have interacted with it at this point. I am so glad that you worked up the courage to ask, even when it was highly likely that the answer was going to be no. I think that sets such a good example for everyone listening. Dream big and just try stuff, just ask, just reach out to people. And the worst thing that can happen is they say no. And the reality is with commissioning, especially now, 6 years into my career, I do have to say no quite a bit, but I'm so glad that I was able to say yes for this one. Margot, I am so grateful to call you a friend and colleague, and I'm so happy that I was able to include your lovely voice in my podcast. Before I wrap up this episode, I want to address a couple of things that have come up over the years of working with this piece. So one of my favorite instruments to write for is the horn, but unfortunately, many bands at this level do not have any horns, which makes me very sad, but I do understand that it's a complex problem to solve. So in recent years, I've been much better at providing cues within the band to cover parts that may be missing, such as horn or double reeds, oboe, bassoon. But I did not do this in Into the Blue. And the one moment that I really miss it is in the final few measures of the piece, where the horn has the third of the chord. So I'm going to just quickly play the excerpt of the final chord so you can hear what it's supposed to sound like with the beautiful horns. Ah, so nice. If you are working on the original version of this piece with a band that has no horns, I encourage you to assign that final note, which is a concert C, the third of the A flat major chord, to someone else in the ensemble if you can. Perhaps split the trombones or the clarinets maybe, so that you can achieve this warm, beautiful sounding chord even without the horns and without changing the texture too much of that final moment. At measure 25, most of the low brass and low woodwinds have the melody. I played that excerpt for you earlier, but I left out the tuba and I sort of regret it. So for some ensembles at this level, especially with younger players, it seemed maybe a little bit ambitious to include that melody in the tuba part. But as I mentioned, I am a bass clarinetist and I go on and on about giving melodic moments to the low instruments. And then I myself fully just left somebody out of this one. So I'm so sorry, tuba players. If you are working on this piece and you have a solid, keen tuba player, please feel free to have them join in here. I'm thinking about creating a new version of this piece. Everything will stay the same, but I might just update the engraving a little bit to make it look cleaner. And I'm thinking about adding in the melody for the tuba at this moment because I feel so bad. And Margot herself is a tuba player too, so I can't believe that I left it out. Anyway, this is also a good opportunity for a reminder that my music at this level, this piece is a grade 2, but most of my music in this sort of 2-3 range is suitable for middle school, high school, college and university bands, even community ensembles. Although it was 9th graders who commissioned this piece, it is really beautiful to hear it played by more mature musicians as well. And just very, very small rant. Just because it's grade 1, 2, 3 doesn't mean it's just for musicians who are little. There are so many applications for music at this level. There are, the New Horizons bands where it's a group of older adults that are getting back into music making after many, many years away, or people that are starting on secondary instruments or that want to keep up their playing, but performing is not the main thing that they do. There are so many reasons that we need good music at this level, and music that doesn't sound like a method book, music that really says something and means something and connects with people. So I believe that this is an example of that, and the recording that I've been playing excerpts from is hopefully a good example of that as well. That's a university level ensemble that is playing a grade 2 band piece. Okay, we made it to the end of the first episode. Yay! Before we go, I should let you know that this piece, along with all of my concert music, is available on my website, katenishimura.com, where you can find perusal scores, program notes, full-length recordings, and more info about me and my work. If you have enjoyed hearing about Into the Blue, go and check it out. You can take a look at the score. You can listen to a few different recordings. You can buy a copy for your library if you wish, the regular full concert band version and also the 4-part flexible version. Both are there on my website. Thank you so much to Margot for the wonderful contribution to this episode. Thank you to the students for asking me to write Into the Blue back in 2018. Thank you to everyone all over the world who has played this piece. And thank you all for listening. I've had a lot of fun talking about this. I hope you've enjoyed hearing about it, and I hope you'll join me again next week to hear episode 2. Bye for now.